friendly neighborhood demigod lover here, and today we are talking about Trials of Apollo. Yeah, that thing. Spoilers ahead. So, Trials of Apollo is a very underrated series. It's not thought of as good as the original Percy Jackson or as Heroes of Olympus. But why is this exactly? Well, there are a number of reasons. I'm going to kind of be going through these reasons one by one and talking about why we shouldn't, degrade the series for that. Reason number one, Percival. Percival is not really in this. We haven't gotten to see much of Percy and Annabeth. Annabeth actually isn't in Trials of Apollo at all, and Percy is only in the first book, which he doesn't even have that big of a role in. And naturally, since Percy and Annabeth are the OGs, people really love them and aren't really happy about the idea of them kind of going their way and not really being part of the books anymore. And as much as I understand this, I feel like people kind of have to move on. People degrade any book that does not give Percy and Annabeth a big part. Like The Lost Hero, Percy wasn't in The Lost Hero, and Annabeth was only in it a little bit, so people didn't really like The Lost Hero. And Blood of Olympus, same thing. Percy and Annabeth were in it, but it was more focused on Jason, Piper, and Leo, as well as Raina and Nico. That's why books like House of Hades, where Percy and Annabeth are quite literally trekking through hell together, are like people's favorite books from Heroes of Olympus because Percy and Annabeth are given a spotlight. And as much as I understand this, you have to acknowledge the fact that they can't have a spotlight forever. In the same reason people were mad when, starting with Heroes of Olympus, Grover was kind of not really in the series either. I mean, he was only really there occasionally, didn't really have a major part, but again, you have to come to terms with that. In order for a book to be satisfying, there needs to be character development. And there's a lot of character development that you can do with one or two characters and make them really in-depth, but in the end, there's only so much you can do. After The Last Olympian, Grover's story was kind of over. He had a girlfriend, he had his new mission to go follow the wild or whatever, and there wasn't really much more for him to do in the series. If someone's gonna have a major role, you need to give them some sort of character development. And there wasn't really a way to give Grover that. I mean, he was kind of done. Percy and Annabeth, on the other hand, well, it does give you a satisfying ending at the end with them deciding to date, but there is still more to be done, because we've gotten to see them develop as friendship, and then in Heroes of Olympus, we got to see how they developed as a couple, which is something we hadn't already gotten to see. And you can't throw all the heart chips at Percy and Annabeth either. You can't just take things that would be part of other people's stories and just put them part of Percy and Annabeth's story. My point is, there's only so much you can do with each character in terms of character development before it gets a little stale, which is why Percy and Annabeth aren't really in Trials of Apollo, because there wouldn't be a point. There's no character development to be had with these characters anymore. Their journey through Tartarus, in a multitude of ways, was kind of the ultimate challenge for them. They were literally going through the worst place in existence together. These characters, what more can you possibly do? They have the ultimate challenges that they face with Percy choking the goddess of misery. There's a part where they're at this river and it's showing Annabeth all these images of people that she's seen die, and she has to overcome that. There's them abandoning Bob and Damison, which is described as the hardest thing that they've ever had to do. Also, Annabeth says that she realizes this is the ultimate test for a child of Athena, is letting someone else take the brunt of the danger. Making the wise decision to step back and let someone else get hurt, especially when that person is your friend. And she had to accept the fact that she couldn't protect everyone she loved. Tartarus proves to be the ultimate challenge for Percy and Annabeth, both as individuals and as a couple. I don't know if you guys remember this part, but right after they finish falling down the pit, they end up in this river of misery that's filling their heads with these depressive thoughts of give up and just let the river carry your dead body away and things like that. And they are about to do that, and then Annabeth realizes what's happening. She realizes that they're in the river of misery, and she kisses Percy and she tells him tell me about New Rome in the future, you wanted us for us there, and their story is just so complete. After all they've been through, after all the stakes, after they've literally gone through hell together, you really can't ask for much more. And you really can't elevate the stakes much more than that. As much as you might not like it, Percy and Annabeth just can't have a spotlight unless there's actually something for them to do that offers character development. There's really not much more character development to be had. So that's one reason why people don't like Trials of Apollo. Another reason I think people don't really like it is because of the tragedy. I think you all know what I'm talking about. But I don't just mean that. I don't just mean, that thing. I mean, like, all the tragedy that happened. Like, after Blood of Olympus, it seemed like everything just wrapped up so perfectly. All our OTPs were intact, all our characters were, like, alive and well, and Leo's brought back to life and everything seemed well and good. Everybody was happy and getting along, and I think people wanted to imagine that it would stay that way forever, that there would be no tragedy, that all of our characters would live their lives to an old age and retire together as happy couples. But life is not that perfect. There's the major tragedy, aka the burning maze, but there is also some other things as well that aren't really tragedies, but they are kind of things that some people would rather not happening. For example, Leo and Calypso. They didn't really get along throughout the Dark Prophecy at all, and though they never ended up breaking up and like those issues were acknowledged and stuff, people were scared that they were gonna break up, and they kind of wanted to just not acknowledge that at all. And same with what happened to Jason. People just don't want to acknowledge that it happened. They're just kind of gonna pretend that, you know, Jason is alive and well and everything is great and he and Piper are... I'm sorry, I'm making you cry. And also, with Reyna joining the Hunters. I personally think this was well written, but I think we've all just become attached to the idea that Reyna is a Praetor. With like her purple cloak and everything, we just have this idea that Reyna is Praetor. And by changing that, it's just not the same. And making her a hunter is, yes, good character development, but it's just not the same. Because we've always just kind of seen Reyna and Frank as the Praetors of New Rome. As much as I think Frank and Hazel will make great Praetors and stuff, it's just kind of, and P.S., is that how you pronounce it? Is it Praetor or Praetor? Like, does someone want to tell me? Okay, thanks. It's not just the tragedy, I'm looking at you, the Burning Maze, and no, I will not stop talking about that, but it's also everything else. Things that weren't necessarily bad things that happened, but things that just strayed from the image that we had in our minds. And that's why people kind of pretend that the Trials of Apollo don't exist, is because they don't want to acknowledge the terrible things that happened in the series. But that's exactly why we should acknowledge it. Some people say that what happened to Jason was kind of not really done well, because he already fought like titans and giants and stuff. But that's kind of the point. Death is untimely, and it sucks. And someone can survive these absolutely huge, monstrous threats to be easily defeated by someone who doesn't seem nearly as threatening, because they made the one mistake in battle of holding someone's gaze too long to make sure that a promise sinks in. Remember what it's like to be human. And it's Lester who, yes, has dealt with painful deaths in the past, but it's never really dealt with it and gone through grief the way that a human has never gone through that stage that a human would, of blaming himself, of going through these emotions. I'm going to talk about this in another video, but people also really didn't like Jason until this book. It kind of makes sense, but it's you taking someone for granted, then something happening to that person and you kind of realizing. And it kind of had to be a character that we've already known for several books now. It kind of already had to be a character we really like for it to really sink in, because we are experiencing the grief along with Lester. He's not dead. Piper repeated her mantra as if trying to charm speak herself as well as us. He's gone through too much to die now, like that. I wanted to believe her. Sadly, I had witnessed tens of thousands of mortal deaths. Few of them had any meaning. Most were untimely, unexpected, undignified, and at least slightly embarrassing. The people who deserved to die took forever to do so. Those who deserved to live always went too soon. Falling in combat against an evil emperor in order to save one's friends, that seemed all too plausible a death for a hero like Jason Grace. That passage is us also being there with Piper, not believing that he's actually dead, and us kind of like being drawn back to reality a little bit. Like, most people die at a time that isn't right and isn't fair, and being like brought back to that. That's important. That's the whole point of Jason's death. That's why it's written so well. And as sad as it is, we have to acknowledge it for that reason. It's because we like to imagine that after Blood of Olympus, everything was perfect forever. But life is not that much of a fantasy. And because life is not a fantasy, someone can face off these huge titans and giants and then die at the hands of some evil emperor who doesn't seem like nearly as much of a threat. As much as we don't want to, we kind of have to acknowledge the fact that our favorite characters won't all be alive and well and doing what they were doing at the end of Blood of Olympus like many years when they're all adults and stuff like that, like we would like to imagine. Because to quote Percy on the very first page of The Lightning Thief, being a half-blood is dangerous. Most of the time, it gets you killed in nasty, painful ways. Now, so far, I've been mainly talking about how Trials of Apollo is underrated and how these are the things that are good about it that we need to acknowledge that are good things. But this one's more of a critique because it's something I think could have been done better, is Lester developing friendships with the Seven and with the other main characters. Because he like cares about the characters and he doesn't like want anything bad to happen to them, but he's not really like good friends with them. I understand why Piper would resent Lester, and I understand why like some of the characters might not like him very much, but like I feel like he should have a closer connection to some of the characters, like more of a friendship with Thalia, for example. I like the friendship he developed with Calypso, I will say that, but I just wish Lester had still developed more of a friendship with like Leo and Piper and Hazel and Frank, and that would have just been great. I mean, because that's a big reason why people like the rest of the Seven, is because they think of like the Seven and Nico and Raina and Will and all these people as like one big happy family. Because Lester and Meg aren't really good friends with any of the above, we kind of don't really include them in that. Now, I understand not giving these characters as much of a spotlight, but I just feel like there could have been more friendship between Lester and the rest of the main characters, and that would have been better. On a similar note, side characters. A big reason why we love Percy Jackson is because of our favorite side demigods. Selena Beauregard, Charles Beckendorf, the Stoll brothers. There you go, I gave you someone alive. The Stolls are alive. The side characters in the Hidden Oracle, it was a completely new group of characters. As much as I love Paolo Montez and the Victors and Sherman Yang and everything, and I feel like it was great how they were given so much personality despite the limited amount of time dedicated to them, I feel like it's not the same because they were only in the Hidden Oracle. Now, I understand plot convenience, of course. The fact that we haven't really gotten to see them progress throughout the books and throughout the years and them getting older with the characters, which is what we got to see in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, it just wasn't really the same. I love our new side demigods, but it just doesn't really give you the same feeling as the original side demigods. But one thing that I do really appreciate about Trials of Apollo that I feel like a lot of people overlook is romance. Or lack thereof. I remember when Magnus Chase was first released and we had Samira and Magnus and everything, and Samira was not presented at all as a love interest for Magnus, like she already has a boyfriend, and people were really happy about that at first, like yay, no cliche romance! But soon after that, people got tired of the no romance for the protagonist thing, and they started going crazy. So in the next book, we were presented with Alex Fierro. Now, I'm not complaining about Magnus being given a love interest. I do like Fierro Chase, but I just feel like people at first will say, for once, I don't want a protagonist with a love interest, but then as it develops, they're like, give them a love interest. And Lester does have love interests, mainly because he's attracted to basically everyone he sees. But he doesn't actually get a girlfriend or boyfriend. And when he suggests dating to Raina, she laughs in his face. Now, I know not all couples are Perciveth, but here's why Perciveth worked out. Percy and Annabeth were the main characters in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, with other people, yes, but it was mainly a story about these two characters more than anything else. And in a similar way, Trials of Apollo has mainly been a story about Lester and Meg, more than anyone else. Lester and Meg, who are 4 years apart and therefore have a more sibling-like relationship as opposed to a romantic one. I feel like people just don't like that Lester doesn't have a love interest because they're just like insane shippers. But like honestly, Lester not having a love interest, in my opinion, was a really good thing because it allowed Lester's journey to be about family, to be about acknowledging that he sees Meg as a little sister, and seeing that Lester is Apollo and Will is the son of Apollo and Will has a big role in the next book. That's also gonna take home the whole family thing. Generally though, I really like Trials of Apollo, and I feel like it's underrated. Lester and Meg are actually really great characters. I personally find Lester's narration absolutely hilarious. And I really like his character development in the Hidden Oracle. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below what you think about Trials of Apollo. Do you like it? What do you like about it? What do you dislike? And yeah, this has been the Demigod Lover, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.